The old asylum had been shut down for decades, left to rot and crumble in the years since its doors had last been opened. But still, people talked about it. Whispers of ghosts and demons that still haunted its halls echoed through the town, passed down from generation to generation as a warning to stay away. But teenagers are never ones to listen to warnings, and so a group of them decided to explore the abandoned asylum, determined to prove that the stories were nothing but myths. They laughed and joked as they climbed over the rusted gates and made their way inside, daring each other to go deeper and deeper into the darkness. The first few minutes were fun. They joked and teased each other, taking turns exploring different parts of the crumbling building. But as they ventured further in, they began to feel a sense of unease. The walls seemed to close in around them, and strange noises echoed through the halls. They found themselves in a large, open room that looked like it had once been a common area for patients. As they explored the room, they heard a strange noise coming from down the hall. It sounded like someone whispering, but they couldn't make out any words. The teenagers decided to investigate, following the sound deeper into the asylum. As they walked, the darkness grew thicker, and the air grew colder. Doors creaked open and closed on their own, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the halls. Then suddenly, one of the teenagers, a girl named Emily, disappeared. They called out to her, but there was no response. They searched the room, the halls, the entire floor, but she was nowhere to be found. As they searched, they began to realize that they were not alone in the asylum. Something was there with them, something that wanted them dead. They could hear it breathing, feel its hot breath on their necks, and see its eyes glowing in the darkness. The teenagers ran for their lives, screaming and panicking as they tried to find a way out. But the asylum seemed to shift and twist, its hallways leading them in circles, and its doors slamming shut behind them. One by one, they were picked off by the entity that haunted the asylum, until only one was left standing. He finally stumbled upon Emily, who was cowering in a dark corner. Together, they made a desperate dash for the exit. As they burst out into the sunlight, they thought they were safe. But the asylum wasn't finished with them yet. The doors slammed shut behind them, and the building began to crumble and collapse in on itself. As they looked back in horror, they saw the ghostly forms of the asylum's former patients and staff, rising up from the rubble, their twisted faces and broken bodies a testament to the horrors that had taken place within those walls. The teenagers ran for their lives, never looking back, and vowing never to set foot in the abandoned asylum again. But they knew that the nightmares would haunt them for the rest of their lives, a reminder of the evil that lurked in the shadows of the world. Years passed, and the story of the abandoned asylum became a local legend. People who had never even visited the town knew of the place, and it became a popular destination for ghost hunters and thrill seekers. But no one ever came out of the asylum alive. The authorities had long since given up trying to keep people out. They had boarded up the windows and doors, erected fences and warning signs, but still people came. Some were curious, some were looking for a thrill, and some were drawn by something darker and more sinister. The few who survived their encounters with the entity that haunted the asylum were never the same. They were plagued by nightmares, visions of the twisted faces and broken bodies that had once inhabited those walls. But still, the asylum stood, a monument to the darkness that lies within us all. It stood as a reminder that there are things in this world that we cannot understand, that we cannot control, and that we should never underestimate. And so, the abandoned asylum remained, a warning to all who dared to seek out the unknown, to challenge the boundaries between this world and the next, and to flirt with the forces of darkness that lurk just beyond the veil. Despite the warning signs and the tales of terror that surrounded the asylum, there were always those who dared to enter its decaying walls. Some were thrill seekers, while others were simply curious, drawn by the mystery and the history of the place. But as the years went by, fewer and fewer people returned from their explorations of the abandoned asylum. Those who did come back told tales of horrors beyond imagining, of shadows that moved on their own, of whispers in the darkness, and of ghostly apparitions that seemed all too real. Rumors began to spread that the asylum was cursed, that anyone who entered its walls was doomed to suffer a fate worse than death. Some believed that the spirits of the patients who had been imprisoned there had been trapped within the building, and that they were seeking revenge on those who had wronged them. Others believed that the asylum was haunted by something far more sinister, an evil entity that had been unleashed upon the world, and that was now using the abandoned building as a portal into our world. Whatever the truth may have been, the abandoned asylum remained a place of dread and fear for generations to come. Even as the town around it grew and changed, the old building stood unchanged, a looming shadow on the landscape that seemed to defy time itself. And yet, despite all the tales of terror that surrounded the asylum, there were always those who were drawn to it, lured by the promise of forbidden knowledge and the thrill of the unknown. They came in search of answers, of truth, or simply of a good scare. But no matter what their motivations may have been, they all shared one thing in common. They never returned. And so the legend of the abandoned asylum lived on, a dark reminder of the horrors that lurk just beyond the edge of our vision, waiting to consume us all. As time passed, the abandoned asylum became a place of forbidden curiosity and macabre fascination. It was as if the entity that haunted the asylum drew people to it like moths to a flame. People would come from all over the world to explore the decaying halls and corridors of the old building. Some came seeking answers to the mystery that shrouded the asylum, while others were simply looking for an adrenaline rush. But no one who entered the asylum ever came out the same. Those who returned spoke of horrors beyond comprehension, of ghosts and shadows that moved on their own, of screams that echoed through the empty halls, and of a pervasive feeling of dread that never left them. The authorities had long since given up trying to keep people out of the asylum. They had erected fences and warning signs, and boarded up the windows and doors, but still people came. Some were determined to find a way inside, and they would break down the barricades with hammers and crowbars. Others were more patient, waiting until nightfall to slip through the gaps in the fence, like thieves in the night. But no matter how they got inside, they all met the same fate. They would disappear into the shadows, swallowed up by the darkness that seemed to permeate every inch of the asylum, and no one ever heard from them again. As the years went by, the legend of the abandoned asylum grew, taking on a life of its own. People spoke of it in hushed tones, as if afraid that even speaking its name would invite the wrath of the entity that haunted the place. And yet, there were always those who were drawn to the asylum, who couldn't resist the lure of the unknown. They came from far and wide, seeking to unravel the mystery of the place, or simply to satisfy their own morbid curiosity. But the entity that haunted the asylum had other plans for them. It would take them, one by one, and add them to its collection of lost souls, forever trapped in the darkness of the abandoned asylum. And so the legend lived on, a testament to the power of fear and the darkness that lies within us all.